senators to discuss his plan to pull troops out of Syria. This after ISIS claims responsibility for a suicide bombing that killed 4 Americans. Here to discuss is former intel officer and Iraq War veteran Don Bramer. Don, thanks so much for being here. Before we start grilling you with questions here, I want you to hear what Lindsey Graham said yesterday right in the middle of the Barr hearings on this very topic. Take a listen.
My concern by the statements made by President Trump is that you'd set in motion enthusiasm by the enemy we're fighting.
You agree. You say the fact that these statements are coming out is part and parcel of the reason why this attack happened. Why do you say that?
Well, Todd, good morning. You know, the first thing I'd like to say is my condolences to the families of these Americans. But anytime that you politicize or publicize troop movement, you engage the enemy. You know, one of the things that when we looked at al-Qaeda in Iraq, you know, when we said mission accomplished, we saw an increase in attacks. Iraq, Syria, whether it's al-Qaeda or ISIS, they're in this for the long game, and they believe that they can wait America out. So when we say we're pulling out, all that does is put targets on the people that we have there in country, and it gives them a chance to jubilate that they have a victory and that we're pulling out and we're leaving it behind. So even though this president has done a phenomenal job of eradicating more than 90% of ISIS, that remaining 8 to 10% is still very, very dangerous.
So what's the approach? How do you appease all masters in this situation? Those that say President Trump said we were going to get out of Syria, appease those folks, but stay in to continue our commitment there and to protect the homeland as well as the troops' lives themselves.
Well, one of the things our troops have to remain is when we start promoting that we've had a victory and that we've won here and that we're going home, you know, it's natural for people to lower their guard. We need to stay vigilant. This is still an enemy that is deadly and at our hand. What I think we need to do is stop this publicizing of troop movement and all this promotion that we're doing either by social media and not just by the administration but across the board, because all that does is give material and propaganda to our enemy. What we need to do is stay the course. We need to support our allies, and the biggest thing is that if we are going to reduce our footprint there, we need to make sure that we have very, very strong allies.
Switching gears now, the U.S. commitment to NATO in the headlines lately, the U.S. assuring the world that this commitment is very strong after the president allegedly in a New York Times report said, you know, we want to get out of NATO. Is it misconstruing criticism of the organization, of NATO, as a threat to withdraw?
Well, what I think here is, Todd, you know, it's been no mystery that the president has had some stark criticism of NATO. You know, when you have 29 member countries with only 2 to 3 that pay their fair share of 2% or beyond, with more than half paying 1% or below, and then the United States having a 4.81% percentage of this, you know, it's unfair to us. And a lot of countries who have said they're going to step up their percentage still continue to take advantage of us. The alliance is more important than ever, especially if you look at what's going on in Syria. You look at what's going on across the globe in China, North Korea, and Russia. We need this alliance. We have to stay fast, but the rest of the world has to step up and pay its fair share.
So in your estimation, despite this back and forth that seems to be going on in the media, we're in NATO for the long haul?
I would certainly believe so, and I think, you know, Congress came forward and they stood first on their support of funding and standing along NATO. I think the rest of the world needs to step up to the plate and make sure that they're there to do their share as well.
Don Bramer, it's insight we need in this world right now. We appreciate you getting up and sharing it with us. Thanks so much, sir.
Thank you, Todd.
All right, the time now is 37 minutes after the hour. A Fox Business alert, a massive recall impacting nearly 200,000 cars over concerns they can catch fire. What you need to know if you have one in your garage right now.
Yeah,
wow.
I'm told cars are not supposed to catch fire.
That's not supposed to happen.
Right. Plus, if you haven't seen...
Fire risks.
This is not good. Tracy Carrasco from our sister network, Fox Business, with what you need to know. Hey, Tracy.
Yes, good morning. Hyundai and Kia recalling 168,000 vehicles over a fuel pipe problem that can cause engine fires. Now, the problem stems from improper repairs during previous recalls for engine failures. Now, both automakers right now under investigation by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration to see if enough vehicles were covered under that previous recall. But as you know, that agency impacted by the government shutdown. So that's why Kia and Hyundai have moved forward with this other recall. So we are seeing all of those vehicles recalled. You should be getting a notice if your vehicle is involved in this. But there's also a product improvement campaign that both companies are rolling out that will impact about 3.7 million vehicles just to make sure your vehicle is safe.
You got to have safety. It's so important. Housing a problem across the nation, affordable housing that is. In Seattle, Microsoft is going to be doing something about it.
Yes, Microsoft is making its largest pledge in the company history, pledging $500 million
it is
to help
Thursday,
address
February, January, rather.
Help build affordable housing in the Seattle area, which that area has seen real estate prices skyrocketing as more and more tech companies have moved in. So Microsoft says that it would open up housing options for low and middle income workers almost immediately. That is the first step that they're taking. So good to see that they are doing something about this problem.
$500 million. That is
a lot of
small
money.
Paycheck.
Yep.
Tracy, thank you.
Thanks, Tracy. Time now, 44 minutes after the hour. Nancy Pelosi wants the president to postpone a State of the Union address over safety concerns in the shutdown. Our next guest says the left's real concern is stopping the president from doing what he does best, that is, talking to the American people.
And this driver turns a parking lot into a demolition derby. The unreal video coming up.
Students and staff change their names on school IDs. It's all part of the university's Gender Inclusion Initiative. Students and faculty can now change their first and middle names. School leaders saying some people were being alienated, especially those in the transgender community, by being forced to use their legal name. In Connecticut, lawmakers looking to add climate change to the curriculum. A state leader proposed a bill to start teaching the issue starting in elementary school. Connecticut already uses science standards that call for teaching climate change. If passed, Connecticut will be the first state to sign that requirement into law. And with that, Carly, over to you.
Thanks, Todd. All right, Nancy Pelosi getting serious pushback after demanding President Trump call off the State of the Union address over the shutdown.
This requires hundreds of people working on the logistics and the security of it. Most of those people are either furloughed or victims of the shutdown, the president's shutdown. But that isn't the point. The point is security.
Homeland Security, the FBI, Secret Service have all assured us that they can do their job. So I think that's her primary objective there, is to take away a microphone from the president.
So, is she just trying to silence the president? Joining me now is Republican strategist Kimberly Klacik. Kimberly, thank you for being with us this morning.
Good morning.
All right, so Speaker Pelosi says it's all about security. Are you buying it?
I think it's ironic. So Speaker Pelosi, she wants to have security at the State of the Union address, but she doesn't want security at our southern border. I think that's quite ironic, but I have to tell her she should be happy that the Capitol is actually a gun-free zone, so she doesn't actually need that good guy with the gun that she always says isn't actually necessary.
And you take a look at the Department of Homeland Security's response. Kirstjen Nielsen tweeted, the Department of Homeland Security and the U.S. Secret Service are fully prepared to support and secure the State of the Union. We thank the service for their mission-focused and dedication to all and for all they do each day to secure our homeland. So you see a response like that, and you have to say, well, okay, so security is off the table. Is she possibly trying to make it so that the president doesn't have this big forum to talk about his border security wall and his side of the story in terms of the government shutdown?
Absolutely. And as far as I know, we elected the president. So I don't think she really speaks for we, the people, in saying whether or not our State of the Union address shouldn't be done and shouldn't be televised properly. I think, honestly, Nancy Pelosi does her best job at fear-mongering, and that's what she's doing again today.
But, you know, the Democrats get a response after the State of the Union, so wouldn't she want that?
You would think so. You would think so, but I don't know what the response would be. What would this response be? We don't need security at our southern border? We absolutely do.
Well, the response to the president's speech that he made just a few weeks ago didn't go too well for the Democrats and Speaker Pelosi. So maybe she's a little gun-shy on those responses. So do you think that the State of the Union will go on as scheduled on January 29th?
I absolutely do. I mean, I don't think our president has ever stood down from anyone, especially not from Nancy Pelosi. I think he'll go through as usual, and I think everyone will be there, and I think it's going to be secure as well.
All right, so I want to get to another topic. It's the Democratic National Committee. They have distanced themselves. They basically cut ties with the Women's March over the co-founder Tamika Mallory's relationship with Louis Farrakhan. I know you have some pretty serious thoughts on this one. What are your thoughts?
Absolutely. So I'm on Twitter a lot, and I'm always lectured about being pro-Trump, even though he uses languages that a lot of people don't think is proper or politically correct. So to me, here is a point where Tamika Mallory, the president of the Women's March, could actually condemn Louis Farrakhan for his anti-Semitic remarks, and he even has remarks that are bad towards women. He thinks women should stay home and their places to be cooking and cleaning, not marching for equality. And these are people that she's supposed to be marching alongside with on Saturday, and here she can't even condemn his comments.
Now, this is someone, we're talking about Louis Farrakhan here, who has called the powerful Jews are the enemy, white folks are going down, and I'm not anti-Semite, I'm anti-termite. And she says that she supports Louis Farrakhan because of the work he's done in the black community. So do you think that she just supports people that she aligns with? Because she's really fighting for, you know, equality for all people. So something doesn't add up here.
It definitely doesn't add up. And, you know, to me, another part that didn't add up is she sat there on The View. Whoopi Goldberg sat there in silence, basically, and she could not condemn Louis Farrakhan in his comments. Whoopi Goldberg once identified as a Jewish woman, and she sat there silently. Yet this summer, we saw her attack Judge Pirro because she said that the Trump administration and the president himself uses rhetoric that incites violence against minorities. But she sat there silently. So the hypocrisy is there. She needs to condemn. She should step down as the president.
You know, this is going to put Jewish women who want to attend the march in a very difficult position. You have to think about that one as well. Kimberly, thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
The time now is to begin with this, a Fox News alert. And right now, 1,700 migrants are pushing through Guatemala, inching towards the U.S. border.
Griff Jenkins is traveling with the caravan. He joins us live from Guatemala City as we've learned that a brand new group is now on the move. Hey, Griff.
Hey, Rob and Jillian, good morning. Yeah, we are in Guatemala City outside of a migrant shelter, Casa del Migrante. The capacity there is 300. The organizer told us yesterday that she expects upwards of 2,500 to come. But you can see outside on the streets already, dozens of migrants have come and are sleeping outside. It looks like one is starting a fire. It's a little cold here in these early morning hours. We're told they may be also waking up because there was a discussion that they might start marching towards Mexico. We're about 150 miles from that. One thing I want you to note is actually, if you look at the trash in the street, Rob and Jillian, this was not here yesterday. And I mention it because it was one of the real frustrations in Mexico with Mexican citizens and in Tijuana. They don't like the trash. It is something that this caravan is going to get grief for. We talked inside. If you look inside of this shelter, you can see they are trying to give the migrants some food, shelter, and a shower as they continue their way towards ultimately the United States. But one of the migrants, Marcio Caballero, we asked him a little bit about his story. Here's what he had to say.
2 years ago.
Are you discouraged from trying to go because the border is harder to get across?
I know it's harder now than before, but I gotta try. I have to.
And the numbers are going to grow. That El Salvador caravan, you mentioned about 150 starting down there, making their way north into Guatemala as well. Ultimately, will group up. The people here say they're trying to get their numbers stronger because as they approach the Mexico border, they know that the greatest threat to their caravan is in Mexico, where both criminal organizations prey on them in small numbers, as do the Mexican immigration police, who will deport them. We'll find out as these numbers grow here exactly what happens. We're 150 miles from the Guatemala-Mexico border, and that is certainly where the next real test will come to see if Mexico's officials make it harder for them to get across that border. Rob, Jillian?
Yeah, that's interesting. All right, Griff in Guatemala City, thank you so much.
Well, the House passing a disaster relief bill that would fund the government through early February. It would help areas affected by hurricanes and wildfires and reopen the government temporarily. But the Republican-controlled Senate isn't likely to consider the bill because there is no money for President Trump's border wall. Democrats have expressed concern that the president would use disaster funds for the wall. Key Republicans say they're confident that won't happen.
All right, check this out. Last night on Special Report, the House Majority Leader, Steny Hoyer, was forced to admit that walls do work in an interview with Bret Baier. The Democrat also rejecting Speaker Nancy Pelosi's claim that a border wall is immoral.
I don't think it's an issue of morality. A wall is immoral if it tries to imprison people who shouldn't be imprisoned. Okay. A wall is that protects people is not immoral.
Where they most
fear whether it works.
They work some places.
Whether obviously they work some places.
All right, Hoyer also indicated that Democrats are willing to compromise to end the government shutdown. We'll see where this goes.
Republicans firing back against House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's request to postpone the president's State of the Union address. The Democrats citing security concerns during the shutdown.
Todd Pyro joins us live with how the Trump administration is responding. Hey, Todd.
Hey, guys. Good morning. Less than 2 weeks after inviting President Trump to deliver the State of the Union address, Nancy Pelosi now walking that back. The Speaker of the House sending a letter to the president writing, quote, "Sadly, given the security concerns and unless government reopens this week, I suggest that we work together to determine another suitable date after government has reopened." Pelosi attempting to justify her actions.
It's a security decision which is completely out of my hands. This is a housekeeping matter in the Congress of the United States so that we can honor the responsibility of the invitation we extended to the president. You can make it from the Oval Office if you want.
Congressman Steve Scalise sounding off on the move.
The left has become unhinged. They've tried to do everything to insult the president, to not even acknowledge that he is the president. I'd like to see him pick another venue. Pelosi can try to stop the truth from coming out.
House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy telling Fox News, quote, "It's unbecoming of a speaker to do this." Democrats sounding off on the letter and the fate of the address.
No, I don't think it's officially off. I had not seen the Speaker's letter.
And Friends First starts right now.
So it's not officially off now.
The Secretary of Homeland Security, Kirstjen Nielsen, tweeting, quote, "The Department of Homeland Security and the U.S. Secret Service are fully prepared to support and secure the State of the Union. We thank the service for their mission focus and dedication and for all they do each day to secure our homeland." Meanwhile, at the White House, President Trump signs a bill giving federal workers back pay as the shutdown enters day 27. He also sat down with the Problem Solvers Caucus yesterday, but no problems were solved at that meeting. Guys.
All right. Thank you, Todd.
All right. Nancy Pelosi's demand to the president sparking some pushback in Washington.
Former Deputy Chief of Staff to President George W. Bush, Karl Rove, says the Democrats' brand of politics has hit a new low. And Friends First starts right now.
This has never happened in American history. The House of Representatives, the Congress of the United States, has never refused an opportunity for the President of the United States, if they wanted to deliver the State of the Union address in person. This is an extraordinary moment, and it shows exactly how partisan we become, how polarized we become, and in Nancy Pelosi's case, how absolutely irresponsible. Juan's worried about the truth. Nancy Pelosi did not tell the truth today when she claimed that this was all because of national security. She did this because she is angry with the president. She wants to humiliate the president. She wants the president to surrender. She's like, Ulysses S. Grant at the Battle of Fort Donelson. She wants immediate and unconditional surrender, and this is her way to do it. Shame on her for doing this. America deserves better than this kind of politics.
If the president issued his address to Congress in writing, it would be the first time since Jimmy Carter in 1981.
All right, a Fox News alert. President Trump will head to the Pentagon today after meeting with senators on the U.S.'s involvement in Syria and Afghanistan. After yesterday's meeting, Senator Rand Paul said the president is still committed to pulling troops out of the Middle East. Senator Lindsey Graham warned that declaring victory could provoke ISIS.
Every American wants our troops to come home, but I think all of us want to make sure that when they do come home, we're safe. So I would hope the president would look long and hard of where he's headed in Syria.
He drew a connection between this attack and that pullout. ISIS taking.
In Southern California, heavy fog and rain blamed for a 19-car pileup. Dozens of people are hurt there. And heavy snow weighing down a plane, leaving it with its nose in the air near Lake Tahoe. Look at that. Janice Dean joins us live as the winter storms push east. It's everywhere, Janice.
Here we go. Yeah, much of the country is going to feel the wrath of some of these storms that are coming in from the west. The cold air is in place. Who will get what? We still have a big question mark on the northeast as we go through the next couple of days. But I can tell you the west remains active with a lot of snow in the mountainous regions and coastal rain now pushing up towards the northwest. Then we're going to see this next storm get its act together across the northeast. This is going to be the sort of the weaker storm, but we're still going to see some snow out of it. Tonight into Friday morning. That's going to be a messy commute for the Northeast. And then this is our big weather maker as we head into the weekend, developing across the Midwest down through the Mississippi River Valley. Who will get the big totals? We think at this point the heaviest snow is going to be inland. That's not to say that you're not going to see some snow along the coast. It's possible, but these snow totals will change over time. We still have a lot of uncertainty. I can tell you parts of the northern plains, upper Midwest will get snow. It will be a rain event for parts of the middle Mississippi River Valley, and then we could see the potential for icing as well along the coast. The big totals will be inland, and here's our model forecast. These totals will change. I will tell you some areas will get over 2 feet of snow, but Boston now we think 7 to 10 inches, New York 2 to 5 inches. That will change because we still are very uncertain with how warm it's going to be, relatively
the rain
speaking.
Snow line, right?
The rain snow line, wherever that sets up, that's going to cut down those snow totals. However, it goes a little bit south or more towards the ocean, then we're going to get more cold air being pulled and more snow.
Yeah,
so stay tuned. We still don't know. I can't give you accurate snowfall totals.
I saw like -5 in the Midwest on Sunday.
Oh, by the way, behind that, some of the coldest air we have seen in some cases in years.
Wow.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
There you go. You have
Giddy
warned
up.
us.
Yeah, exactly. Protesters disrupting confirmation hearings for EPA Administrator nominee Andrew Wheeler.
Position of administrator.
Please remove, please restore order.
This man wants to deregulate. This is an outrage. Shut down Wheeler.
Which seems to happen a lot lately. Capitol Police quickly removing the demonstrators. 8 people arrested. Wheeler has been acting administrator since July.
It is 12 minutes after the hour. The Democrats have been pushing back on the president's pick for attorney general, reverting to Russia yet again. Our next guest says Barr has been confirmed 3 times before, and the last-ditch effort to create controversy just won't work this time.
Plus, real-life fake news. The phony headline that had some thinking President Trump had quit, walked out of the White House. Stay tuned.
Because you break them, I had to take them.
Bill Barr, the left, attacking his record on mass incarceration during his time in the first Bush administration and his potential impact on the Mueller probe.
But will this be enough to derail his nomination? Joining us now is attorney and former deputy assistant to President George W. Bush, Brad Blakeman. Hey, Brad, thanks for coming on this morning. Does he get through, I guess, is a big question.
He does, and he should. The president has set a high bar, and it is going to be Barr who's going to be our attorney general. Let's remember, under President George H.W. Bush, he was confirmed as assistant AG, and then deputy AG, and then by unanimous voice vote, which is unheard of for this type of position, he was confirmed for AG. He is the perfect person. He serves and gets out. He sees service as an opportunity, not a career, and he's a successful attorney, not a hyper-partisan. He's right for the job.
Has any of the way this has played out the last few days surprised you?
No, I mean, this is politics as usual in Washington. They're trying to find any excuse not to vote for somebody who's ultimately overqualified for this job. The president made the right selection at the right time. He's coming back to serve his government again. And Democrats are beside themselves because they were for Barr before they were against him.
Yeah. You know, I really liked what he said, talking about the Mueller investigation. He said, it's not a witch hunt. I think he satisfied a lot of the left with that. He also said that he kind of has no reason to do the wrong thing or to make a bad choice, that he's kind of in a place in his life where he doesn't need to be coerced by anything. I think that speaks volumes, especially in Washington these days, where I think a lot of people do have that issue.
He's beholden to no one.
Yeah.
He's not beholden to the president. He's not beholden to special interests. He is a creature of the law. He's one of the few people in Washington who has absolutely no axe to grind. He is the ultimate professional, and he believes that his job is to honor the Constitution and the rule of law. What more could you ask for?
Yeah. Senator Dianne Feinstein says, that this is all coming down to the Mueller documents. What do you make of that?
It's nonsense. She's looking for any excuse not to support him. He should be supported. I will tell you right now, there is no way this gentleman should not be confirmed. We should welcome this type of service from somebody who has a stellar career.
You still got to think that most of these Democrats, especially the ones that are thinking about 2020, I think they have to vote against this, right? The Harrises
Nothing surprises me with the hyperpartisanship that's happened in this town, even this past week, with the Speaker of the House unprecedentedly uninviting the President to a State of the Union on some bogus claim that he cannot be protected. I mean, this is the debasing of the Constitution and the way things should be done in America. It's unfair. It's not right. And to do it for politics is even worse.
I guess, rewinding a couple months, the grilling that we saw and how it just, captured the entire country of now Justice Brett Kavanaugh. I think a lot of people kind of hoped that would have been a little bit of the last of it, but clearly not.
Well, they certainly can't use that tact again because it was thoroughly rejected by disgust of the American people. But when you see the testimony of Barr, it is sober. It is factual. There is no hesitation in his questioning, and he honestly answers the senators, and I think you can't ask for more than that.
Yeah, he seems like a straight shooter, that's for sure. Brad Blakeman says he gets in. Thank you so much, Brad.
Thank you. Pleasure.
It is 20 minutes after the hour. Slumping sales leading to more bad news for Apple and patience.
Now what the heck's going on? This can't happen again.
Several families say a doctor at Ohio's Mount Carmel Hospital prescribed the powerful painkiller, speeding up their deaths. The hospital, which is also being sued, fired the doctor and suspended 20 caregivers. Wow.
That is sad. All right, not getting vaccinated is now considered a top threat to global health. The World Health Organization condemning the so-called anti-vaxxers out there, claiming that those people reverse progress that's been made against preventable diseases. Also, Ebola, HIV, and the flu making the organization's list of 10 global health threats for 2019.
They say the flu is going to be ramping up. Turning now to a Fox Business alert, Apple reportedly preparing to cut back on hiring over weak iPhone sales.
Wow. Tracy Carrasco from our sister network Fox Business with more on these expected cutbacks for Apple. Hey, Tracy.
Yes, good morning. Apple will cut back on hiring in some divisions. Unclear exactly which divisions will be impacted by this, but this does come after Apple's report of slowing iPhone sales and missing its revenue forecast during the holiday quarter. This is according to a report in Bloomberg. Now, this disclosure from Apple CEO Tim Cook apparently came right after, the day after he sent that letter to investors discussing Apple's recent struggles, particularly in China. You'll remember shares of Apple fell about 10% after that news. Right now, shares of Apple trading just slightly lower in the pre-market. They did close up by almost 1% yesterday.
All right.
Government shutdown. Everybody's worried about TSA with everybody calling in sick. It depends on what airport you're at, though, because when I went to the airport, it was like 40 seconds I was through security.
And that's what the TSA is now saying. They're saying lines are getting back to normal at many airports, despite some of their reports earlier that there were longer lines at airports because of these staffers allegedly calling out sick because of the government shutdown. The TSA reporting that overall passengers waited 30 minutes or less. Almost 98% of passengers waited less than 15 minutes at screening checkpoints. So definitely seeing things get back to normal, not being impacted too much by any workers calling out of work.
Okay, that's good news for people flying. Thanks, Tracy.
Thanks.
26 minutes after the hour, police raiding the home of a 21-year-old Georgia man, uncovering a plan to attack the White House. And that wasn't his only target. More of the details on this are coming up.
And while all eyes are on the shutdown, the trade war with China could be on the cusp of ending. Peter Morici joins us next on what we just learned overnight and how it'll affect our economy. Stay right there. terror attack on the White House. The FBI says Hashur Jalal Taheb told an undercover agent he wanted to blow a hole in the White House, then attack people with guns and grenades. He was arrested in a sting operation where he traded his car for rifles and explosives. The feds raiding his Georgia home overnight. They say they were tipped off by someone who said Taheb had become radicalized. The boyfriend of a rookie police officer now accused of killing her right outside her home. Trayvon Anderson allegedly fired multiple shots at Shatari Payne as she was heading to work in Louisiana. Officials say he called 911 and made up a story about a mystery gunman. Payne had been working as a cop for less than 2 months. 2 other men are also under arrest, believed to be accomplices. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez using her first-floor speech to go after the president.
It is not normal to shut down the government when we don't get what we want. And it is certainly not normal to starve the people we serve for a proposal that is wildly unpopular among the American people.
The Democratic Socialist also led a group of freshman congresswomen on a march to Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell's office. They hope to express frustration with the Senate not considering House bills to end the shutdown. The new chairwoman of the House Financial Services Committee has a fresh warning for Wall Street.
The crisis was a result of Wall Street running amok. The committee will be paying close attention to whether financial regulators try to weaken these important reforms, and we will be keeping an eye on the big banks and their activities.
Democratic Representative Maxine Waters says she will keep a particularly close watch on the growth of financial technology as Americans continue banking in new ways. Rob.
All right, Julian, thanks. All right, economic chaos across the pond. The UK's divorce deal from the European Union could be heading for a hard exit after Plan A, which was more than 2 years in the making, was just voted down in Parliament this week. So as Prime Minister Theresa May scrambles to find a Brexit solution, how would a no deal impact the U.S. and world economies? Here now to weigh in is former chief economist for the International Trade Commission, Peter Morici. Hey, Peter, thanks for coming on this morning.
Nice to be with you.
What is going to happen here? What do you think will happen with this?
I think we're going to have a no deal. Whether that means postponing a decision or they're actually crashing out is uncertain. But let's say if they crash out. Britain is an enormously important export market to the rest of Europe. And Europe is teetering on recession right now anyway, and the central bank over there isn't doing anything about it. And my feeling is that it could tip it into recession, the whole continent. Longer term, Europe could be better off for Britain leaving. But in the short term, it could tip it into recession, and we have to remember that Europe is our largest export market. Right. That's why folks like the Ford Motor Company are so upset. Yeah. But, but the thing is that being inside the EU is not good for Britain. The question is, how do they get out?
Yeah, well, here's Ford's CFO right here. We've got it ready. Bob Shanks saying such a situation, the no deal on Brexit, would be catastrophic for the UK auto industry and for Ford's manufacturing operations in the country. And that's exactly why we're talking about this, because here we are in the United States. You might be wondering, why do we care what the EU is doing with the UK? Because it could have implications on the entire world. It's a big economy over there.
Yeah, but let's be clear here. Ford has got a conflict of interest. Whenever we talk about changing the trade regime, and in this case, Britain leaving the EU, okay? Established players have to rearrange their investments, and Ford doesn't like to do that. I mean, the automakers were against NAFTA in the beginning because they had established themselves in Canada and Mexico in such a way as to take advantage of their tariff protection. So, I mean, whenever you talk about change, that's what you get from the Ford Motor Company. It's not well led right now. It should see to the future, and that is that Britain is better off outside of the EU long term.
Yeah, in the meantime, Theresa May somehow still holding on to power there as we figure out what's going to happen with a new plan and only 70 days to do it. Hey, take a look at this headline, Peter. This is from Forbes, and it talks about, right here, China is losing the trade war in nearly every way. This big conflict between the U.S. and China, and this Forbes article highlights a number of reasons why China is struggling right now. The stock market down, GDP, export-import data, all negative. The president right now is winning in this game.
Well, he's winning in some measure. You know, the trade war isn't the only reason at all that China's got economic difficulties. But the bottom line is China's a kleptocracy. They basically get along by their government cheating on WTO rules, taking advantage of other countries. You know, they're kind of like the kid in the class that's always raiding other people's desks when they're out of the room.
Yeah, they're punks. Yeah.
Well, they're worse than that. They're the Sopranos. And that really is what disturbs me about these negotiations. I mean, you know, let's face it, these are the sort of folks that target prisoners to harvest their organs and transplant them to Communist Party officials. They're running their western provinces like a concentration camp. I mean, we're dealing here with a 1930s fascist regime. And the notion that we can negotiate with these people and somehow or other get them to abide by free market rules and have free trade with them, I think is silly.
Yeah, well, we are so intertwined with China at this point that the idea of pulling away from them and isolating them initially is really painful. But in the long run, it's the thing we got to do.
It's just like Brexit. These relationships are not permanent. They used to not assemble iPhones in China. Mr. Cook doesn't want to take his iPhone assembly out of China, but it's good for the country to do that. Basically, it's a criminal regime. If you think you can do business with the devil, you know, go read, you know, Daniel Webster and the Devil or something. Daniel Webster's not going to come back and defend America. Yeah. We are making a terrible strategic mistake. This is like Chamberlain at Munich.
Yeah. Wow. All right, Peter, thank you so much for your time this morning. As always, we appreciate it.
Take care.
All right.
36 minutes after the hour, a judge ordering top Obama administration officials to answer questions about the Benghazi attack. Is this the next step toward justice? General Anthony Tata says it's about time for accountability. He weighs in next.
And if you haven't seen this video yet, Benghazi, a federal judge ordering former Obama administration officials Susan Rice and Ben Rhodes to answer questions on that deadly 2012 attack.
The judge questioning Rice's motives behind her deceptive talking points and how Hillary Clinton's State Department responded. So could this put the families of Benghazi victims one step closer to justice?
Here now to weigh in is the former Deputy Commanding General of U.S. Forces in Afghanistan and the author of Dark Winter, retired Brigadier General Anthony Tata. Thank you, sir, for coming on this morning. Do you think we learn more here, or will there be an attempt to deceive? Can they dig anything out of this?
Well, yeah, Rob, the wheels of justice are grinding pretty slowly here, but they are grinding. And, you know, the judge, really made an amazing decision here to have Rhodes and Rice sit down and answer questions that need to be answered. The Obama administration, we have to remember the political backdrop here. This was a couple of months before President Obama's re-election, and it also involved Secretary Clinton. So this has really impacted two elections because Secretary Clinton was involved in this decision, and Judicial Watch are continuing to press for this. Otherwise, we would not have any information on this, and it would fly under the radar.
Yeah, a lot of plays certainly, but are you expecting any bombshells to come out of this?
But, you know, I think, Jillian, that if it were a in-person verbal deposition where they didn't have, 10 lawyers reviewing every word that they're going to put down, that there might be something that comes out of it. What I'm seeing here is probably some very carefully scripted answers that, may lead to something, because they're going to have to be very careful. They're under oath, and assuming that they tell the truth, it could lead to they have 120 days to then have another hearing, and then that could lead
time. And you believe that there was this thinking that the Obama administration didn't want there to be a threat of radical Islamism, in these areas. They didn't want people to think that there was that threat. They had an agenda that they were trying to push by hiding this and the information that needed to be out from the people.
That's right, Rob. You think about the backdrop. 2011, we pull out of Iraq. He says there's nothing to worry about, and then the Arab Spring happens, and then the Syrian civil war happens. The ISIS is being created. It's already been determined that they were cooking the books on ISIS intel, and that the president had said he didn't want any intelligence to make it into the public domain that was counter to his narrative. And so Central Command was not producing any products of record that demonstrated anything about ISIS that was not consistent with his belief that there was no threat from radical Islam. And so this is all part of the narrative that, you know, the State Department and others were actually supporting, and he weaponized these agencies to support his political power and agenda.
Yeah, interesting stuff.
General Tata, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Well, how about this? House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer admits walls do work in some areas after all.
That protects people is not immoral. I think the issue is whether it works.
They work some places.
Whether obviously they work some places.
So are the Democrats starting to break from their hardline border stance?
Texas Congressman Michael Burgess joins us next with that. Stay tuned.
Live studio audience. What's going to happen? Stick around. We got 3 fun hours. I've got the actual rundown right here. We're going to have Stuart. All of our guests are going to be live in the studio today, which is such a treat. We've got Lawrence Jones with us. We've got Stuart Varney. Tom Homan, the former acting ICE director, is going to be with us. Judge Napolitano, Jason Chaffetz, Tammy Bruce, Diamond and Silk. People will love that as well. Then we got Pete Hegseth. We got Senator Rand Paul. Bill Hemmer and Sandra Smith are going to be joining us. Also, we're going to have Judge Shaneen. We're going to have a little quiz show with Tom Shalhoub. And then at the conclusion of the program, Lee Greenwood is going to sing God Bless the USA. So anyway, we're going to make a big entrance here in about 12 minutes. I'm not going to go out there, but go ahead, take a peek. There's our first ever live studio audience. It all kicks off very shortly right here on Fox News Channel. All right, Rob, back to you.
Okay.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Okay, House Democrat Majority Leader Steny Hoyer countering Nancy Pelosi, admitting walls do work in some places.
So for the people who are living in those border states, especially with some barrier that has been constructed, would you remove those existing barriers because you say they don't work?
No.
So they work there.
Obviously, they work some places.
That's a big moment.
Yeah.
Will we see Democrats move closer to embracing a border barrier? That's the question this morning. Republican Congressman Michael Burgess oversees a border state. He's in Texas, and he joins us live. Good morning to you, sir. I mean, in the same interview, which was a great one that you should watch if you get time, Bret Baier got him to say that walls can work and do work, and also that he doesn't think walls are immoral. This is Nancy Pelosi's right-hand man. What do you think of that?
Well, it was a breakthrough, I guess. And we've all kind of been waiting to see when people are actually going to talk to each other about this. It has been a series of speeches and talking points to this time, and I hope that is indicative that there is now going to be a little bit of a loosening of the logjam. You know, we were I guess I didn't see Mr. Hoyer's interview yesterday because I was on the Rules Committee and trying to work to get the government open. But the comments continue to be made that, boy, if you just open the government for 30 days and let us work on this and we'll get to a conclusion. But if I recall correctly, when the Speaker and the Minority Leader in the Senate went down to the White House and the President said, well, if I allow things to open for 30 days, will you work with me? And they said no. Right. And he said, okay, goodbye. And that was the end of that discussion. Well, so it needs to change, and people do need to talk. Of course you can come to a compromise and come to a solution on this. It just needs to happen sooner rather than later.
And so we obviously heard what Steny Hoyer had to say yesterday on this program. We had Congresswoman Katie Hill on, a Democrat who says she comes from a law enforcement family, who says she believes in a border barrier and she wants these conversations to keep moving forward. So do you think we kind of start to see the domino effect now in the Democratic Party?
Well, I guess indicative. Congress was supposed to be at home on a district work period last week, and the Speaker has now canceled that. So the Congress will be, the House at least, will be here and working next week, and that's a good thing. We should not be not working when something so important is at stake. I think the story that came out of Puerto Rico with people taking a vacation with lobbyists on the beach, I think that hurt their narrative. So yeah, perhaps there is a little bit of frustration on the other side with how things have actually gone and the narrative that surrounds them.
Yeah, Hoyer just went against the two big reasons that Pelosi has for turning down this idea of some kind of a barrier. I thought that was a very big moment. Let's talk for a second about something else that the Speaker did, and that's asking the President to delay or cancel the State of the Union or just give it in writing. And she makes a point that they've never had a State of the Union when the government was partially shut down. But what do you think?
Oh, the president needs to come and deliver the State of the Union. It's the expectation that the American people have. The president, I'll admit, having been on the other side when a president of the other party is in the White House, there's nothing quite like the majesty of coming and addressing a joint session of Congress with all of the Joint Chiefs of Staff there and all of the diplomatic corps. It's a big deal, and it's a big stage for the president to be on. At the same time, people do want to hear from the president, and it is a constitutional requirement that the president from time to time comes and delivers remarks on either in person or in writing, but he delivers remarks on the State of the Union. So it's a requirement that he come.
Do you see an issue, though, with it being either delayed or in writing?
No, we cannot be. My opinion, it's unacceptable to say that the president should deliver his remarks in writing. It's just that no one wants that. The president needs to. This is. I guess you see this over and over again, and the Democrats are anxious to do things that they don't want to normalize the presidency of Donald Trump. But He is the president. He is the people's president. He was elected. He needs to come and deliver the State of the Union address. And I bet he does a great job.
They want to take the juice out of it. It's a big moment for the president, and they don't like that.
Yes, it is.
Thank you, sir, very much.
Great. Thank you.
We're coming right back.